So did we watch the State of the Union last night?
Oh, yes.
Or no, sorry.
The not a State of the Union.
The joint address of Congress, not the State of the Union. Why
that
is
looks
that the
exactly
case?
like a State of the Union.
Functionally the State of the Union. It's exactly the State of the Union.
I think it's because in the first year of an administration, like that's the new guy. So he's not really in the position to be like, this is how we're doing.
Yeah.
There's a constitutional obligation of the president to update Congress from time to time. Like there might be specific statutory strictures there that I can't recall, but it's basically like, look, the president should occasionally brief Congress on what he's up to.
So could he just do a State of the Union every week?
Huh?
Could he just do it every week? Because
there's literally no reason for this other than pomp and masturbation. That's why the State of the Union addresses now, so the president gets to pretend that he's a king. That's why it exists, and as a campaign boost. Like one of the things that I was thinking about last night was like, if I were a member of Congress, I don't think I would go to these. Like I think that a couple of the crustier Supreme Court justices that just wouldn't turn up were in the right. Like you could just respond with, could have been an email. That should be the response to all this stuff.
Well, that, and also it's like there are those people in the front, like the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Supreme Court, that also have to be like those guards out front of Buckingham Palace and like can't actually react to anything.
Well, that's why Scalia doesn't go. He stopped going to these a long time ago, and it's because
he was in the right.
He couldn't keep his face under control apparently, so he was getting a lot of flack because he was making faces, and he's like, "Fuck it, I'm not going to go anymore."
Good, no.
I'm going to make a prediction. This was the last State of the Union address or equivalent that didn't involve a bullhorn, because these are rapidly like
they're getting
I was working for Congress when Joe Wilson shouted, "You lie," and I think it was the time before that Alito, like Obama was giving a dress down to the Supreme Court because he didn't like one of their decisions, and Alito went, "No, that's not true." And like that was a huge thing. There was the whole paper articles about like, how dare Alito in the joint chambers say that to the president? Now it's like we're basically at the prime minister's questions, only with twangy accents. Like this is straight up prime minister's questions. I think somebody's going to bring in a bullhorn next time. This was the last time we didn't have a bullhorn.
There was a lot of conversation on the Democratic side about props. Some of them were talking about bringing empty egg cartons to show the price of eggs. They wound up settling on little paddles.
They're so dumb.
They wound up settling on little paddles, which were the same as Rashida Tlaib's during Netanyahu's speech, which totally ignores the fact that like when one person has a little paddle sign in a room of people that is making a statement, you are an iconoclast. When everybody has a little paddle sign, you're just the little paddle brigade. You're just all holding up the same little paddle and you're saying, look at our little paddles.
They were like a bunch of children over there on the Democratic side. Like, obviously, I hated everything about Trump's speech. It was a typical Trump speech, rambling, full of lies, like hated it. But I woke up this morning, Joe did too, just like so angry at the Democrats because they're so clearly not up to this moment. Like Al Green becomes the first member of Congress ever kicked out of a joint session of Congress. He's up there with his cane, just yelling stuff. And he said on the way out that he wanted to prove that the Democrats are fighting back. And it's like, no, asshole, the protests, this type of stuff, that's for us to do. That's for the peasants. Yes. We get to wear the pink jacket with the weird Sharpie stuff on the sleeve. Like, that's for us. We need you to be parliamentary geniuses to stop the Trump agenda. Like, maybe don't vote for the Laken Riley. Maybe don't help that become law. Like, that's the type of stuff that I'm looking for in the Democrats. And instead they do this performative shit to the point that
performative shit's a lot easier though, Jen. I got to say it's easier and fun.
It is, but it's also like what I want right now is to have someone respect Congress and just like how our system of government works. So the fact that they didn't stand when Trump walks in, it's like, can't you just respect the office? Because we're going to need you to be the ones making these cases that process matters. The office matters. Like respect for our Constitution matters. And if you are the children who are just going to sit there and pout the whole time,
they just want to be the Tea Party so bad. They
I think I'm okay with the pouting bit. If I were a member of Congress, one, I don't think I'd show up. I think I'd probably give my 2 tickets to the peanut gallery to somebody from the district because that's cool, right? But I don't think I'd show up. I'd like go to Applebee's or something. But if I were in there, I don't want to have to stand up and clap like a seal every 30 seconds when my guy says the thing, if it's my party running it, and I have to pout when they're not. I think I would either act like a Supreme Court justice and just sit there very quietly, or I wouldn't go at all. I don't want to have to be emotionally manipulated by the situation in order to score points.
The other idea that apparently was floated by Democratic leadership was to everybody bring a +1 and the +1 be a fired federal worker, which led me to the idea that it would be interesting, at least visually, because a lot of what happened last night was very made for TV and I think very effective from the Trump,
like the child cop
from the Trump perspective.
Yeah,
yeah, he was so cute.
I mean, come on.
I went to go to the bathroom and I came back and they're holding a child cop aloft, and I was like, "Is that guy the one running Doge? Is that Doge? Is it this child?"
And then he gets to be an honorary Secret Service agent, and he leaps out of his father's arms to hug the head of the Secret Service.
It was real cute.
It's like, come on. And the Democrats didn't stand up.
One Democrat stood up.
Yeah. And it's like, really, guys, come on.
Yeah.
Like, not everything has to be cheer for the kid who got to West Point. Like, cheer for whatever. I mean, come on. Anyway, if you're going to do made for TV, then none of the Democratic coalition shows up, and the entire gallery on that side would be
empty,
either empty, or I don't know if you can have other people down there, but like, have them be fired federal workers. So fired federal workers are staring at the guy that fired them. Like, that at least tells a story. They were here, then they were fired. This is an administration that's off the rails. We're cutting off our nose to spite our face. There's a story you can tell, as opposed to them just looking like just old and grumpy and ineffective. Like, you know, and I was watching the C-SPAN version, so it wasn't like I was watching the one, like, I'm not watching Fox with like a camera up Elizabeth Warren's nose so they look terrible, but it's like, they just looked awful. It was just, you know, the optics could not have been more different. And this comes at a time when, like, yesterday, we're going to get to it in the Patriot episode with tariffs, but like, there's a lot of economic anxiety. There's a lot of foreign anxiety that we're going to get to right now at the top. But it's like, to watch that room, if you're just watching this television show, Donald Trump is this go-go 60s optimism for America. America knows no bounds. And the Democrats are old, angry, and not cheering for an adorable kid who survived cancer, dressed like a police officer.
To stick up for the Democrats a little bit, can we? I'm going to do a compliment sandwich. I'm going to do a compliment sandwich. Okay. Trump, unabashedly, he's got good comedic timing. I got to give the guy this. He's got great comedic timing. Criticism. He's a fucking asshole. Plus, really enjoyed the litany of bullshit programs that were being cut. Really enjoyed that bit. So when it comes to the Democrats, like when they escort Al Green out, now I didn't catch exactly what Al Green was doing. I just saw him.
Another problem, by the way, if you're going to make that big of a deal, you should probably make it for a reason.
So I don't think he should have been kicked out. Like, again, we don't have a monarch. We are not having a king descend to the peasants to give his wishes for them to execute. In fact, it's more the other way around. The executive executes the will of Congress. So if the president wants to come in and unabashedly be an asshole, and you can like what he's doing, I think it's hard to argue that he's not an asshole. Like, I think that's a very difficult position. If he's going to come in and be an asshole and get rid of all decorum, like, then fine. Then the chamber gets to do that. Then Congress gets to be dickbags back to him. And we can descend into this fun tomfoolery prime minister's questions bullshit. I'm here for that. But if we're going to have the one, let the other guy do it. Let Al Green shout stuff back at him and have a big foam finger.
Yeah, but he did it in the first 5 minutes. It wasn't even about a topic. He didn't point out why he was doing it. And then literally they had Mike Johnson's Millhouse looking ass go through Robert's Rules of Order to parliamentarily kick him out. Like, they had him go through the 3 phases of members are urged to keep decorum. Having member not kept decorum, I am now saying that any further outburst will cause you to be kicked out. I am now hereby kicking you out. So they went through the rules to boot him. And then it's like, okay, you want to do made for TV? have them drag your ass out. You're 77.
Yeah.
That's compelling television. Have them drag your old ass out. Instead, they were like, you got to leave. And he's like, all right.
It was the second most interesting thing to happen with a cane that's ever occurred in that chamber. And they didn't even milk it for all it's worth.
Andrew, I agree with you. Obviously, Trump is an asshole. I despise all of the policy things that he said. So it's like, I understand the Democrats, feelings towards Trump. The thing, though, about this particular speech is that the asshole off actually started before the speech began, because when the president comes into the chamber during these, it has been tradition for, ever, that there is a bipartisan group of members of Congress that escort the president in.
Yes.
And so the Democrats refuse to participate in even that. And then he walks in and they refuse to stand. And so when he gets up there and says, it has just become very clear to me that the people over here, there's nothing I can say or do that will have them work with me. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what they proved. And one of the things that we talked about after he won the election is that this was the strategy that the Democrats employed the first time.
Yes.
We're just going to resist and be assholes. And it didn't work to the point that he got reelected.
But maybe if we try it again harder.
Exactly, man.
This time with little signs.
Yeah, other people have figured out oh, this guy really likes it when you massage his balls a little bit. And that's how you can get what you want from him. We have a government shutdown barreling towards us next week where the Democrats will have some leverage. Maybe if they all hadn't acted like petulant children last night, they would be able to have some conversations in the next week that would be productive on an actual policy level. That has now gone completely out the window. So I see their behavior as counterproductive, and it's just going to make things worse. And it looked like 2017, 2018, 2019.
I think it's worse.
I
think it's worse than that, because 2017 public opinion was on their side. Now it's less on their side than it was before. Donald Trump is more popular than he was in 2017. And he was able to come out in that specific scenario. Donald Trump got up and said, to your point, I've done this 5 times. There's nothing I can say that these people will cheer for. Yeah. I could cure cancer. I could bring crime down to 0. They would not cheer.
Bring a 13-year-old in a cop outfit.
And then they don't cheer for the most adorable stunt. He basically was like, I'm going to give this puppy a little Santa hat. That was the level of adorableness that was on display there. You could probably criticize it for being almost too saccharine, but that's the only way that you can do it. You can't not cheer. You can't
for the little boy's dream coming true and the hug. It's just I don't care what policy prop you're using him for cheer for the little boy's sake. Why are you being awful? Yeah, it was awful.
He proved his point. He proved his point. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff that politics are going to turn on, and he may very well be tanking the economy, and that's going to be its own. He's going to reap what he sows on that. He's going to reap what he sows. What we're going to get to here with Ukraine, but the Democrats have their own problem right now. Their opinion polling is in the fucking trash. They are 20% popular. They are less popular than Republicans. Their brand doesn't stand for anything. And while I understand your perspective on hey, parliamentary wise, we need to figure out a way to throw some kind of obstruction for people to do stuff like this. What I would say the most necessary thing is find a thing that Republicans can't support that you can support, and then find a issue for which you can divide the public by way of saying, we believe in X. They believe in Y. They'll never give you this popular thing X. That's the way politics works. You don't do it by oppositional defiance. You do it by standing for something and going forward. You have an opportunity now, because you are in the basement, to try a bunch of shit, have a bunch of people run around. So we're going to find out if Jasmine Crockett saying the fuck word and doing TikTok dances is part of it, or if it's going to be something else. Try a bunch of things and then figure out where to coalesce past that. But right now, it's all on this this weird mushy middle of their audience wants them, their constituency wants them to hashtag do something, and they have the worst possible ideas on what to do.
We don't want you to do the something that we are capable of. The protesting we are capable of. We want you to do some things that only members of Congress are capable of. And speaking of that, I do think that the biggest piece of news that happened last night actually happened outside the chamber because we had a death in Congress.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. So Sheila Jackson Lee last year, she was a Democrat from Texas. She was 74 years old, died in office. She got replaced by a 70-year-old named Sylvester Turner, who last night died in office.
Oh, damn it.
What did you say?
Youth movement.
Autoerotic asphyxiation.
We actually don't know what happened to him, but we do know that now the Democrats have one less person in the House of Representatives, so the numbers are now 218 Republican to 14 Democrats.
And that's going to expand when the Florida specials happen and the New York special happens.
Yeah, that's another thing about these goddamn Democrats is that they have an opportunity to pick up 2 seats on April 1st, and they are completely silent about that. They are just giving up those 2 elections. They're just surrendering them to the Republicans.
Can you elaborate? What seats are these that they could pick up then?
So one of them is Matt Gaetz's district.
Mike Waltz.
In the panhandle of Florida. And then Waltz.
Is the Matt Gaetz one worth contesting? Like, I'm guessing that if it produced Matt Gaetz, that it's overwhelmingly Republican.
Either of them are going to be particularly worth contesting. However, I would make the argument that if you are a national party in the fucking doldrums, and also you're a Florida Democratic Party, which is one of the worst run in the history of the United States, pour some money in it just for reps.
Yeah, why not?
So you get used to it. Like, you know.
And here's the thing. Your voters want you to do something. You have an opportunity here to pick up 2 seats. Mobilize those of us that are just like, oh my God, I need to do something. Like I know someone, I really respect her. She wanted Kamala to win, so she flew to Arizona to knock on doors. If they had put out a call to people like that, being like, I know you're really frustrated with what's happening right now. We need asses on the ground in these 2 Florida districts in the winter in Florida. Yeah. Like fly on down, knock on doors, donate some money. Like let's try and get these 2 seats, because then if they could win those 2 seats, some kind of miracle, or I don't know, maybe people are pissed about them firing veterans and tanking the economy. Like maybe they can win them. Then Elise Slotkin, if she gets, or is it Stefanik?
Yeah, Elise Stefanik.
Stefanik, yeah. If she ends up becoming the UN ambassador, then that seat opens up in New York. If the Democrats were able to win that one, then they could actually take the House. There was a path to actually do something that would give them real power. They've been silent on it. And
I'll do it. I'll run as a Democrat in Florida. Now, listen, here's the deal. If I win, I'm not moving to fucking Florida, but I will represent you in Washington, D.C. So I believe in democracy. I think that the people should have a choice. If it's just a Republican and nobody else, I'll run in Florida, and I will accept the duties and the Democratic caucus if elected. But I won't.
I would move to Matt Gaetz's old district in Florida. It has Destin, which just is really...
The Redneck Riviera?
Yeah, it's so fun. So much mini golf.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young.
I'm Jen Briney.
And from Washington, D.C.
and/or Florida, I'm Andrew Heaton.
And we're not wrong on this edition of the program. We're going to be talking about everything that happened in the last week, resulting in America's relationship with Ukraine.
Wait, just how many days has Trump been in office at this point? It's like 36.
50.
Oh, is it 50
Today's
now?
50.
Is it 50? Oh, my
50.
God. 50. Oh, my God. Okay, please continue. I apologize for interrupting.
There's so much more to go.
This story has changed like 4 times since we decided we wanted to do it on Friday. We record on Wednesdays. It's changed like 4 times.
Yep.
And then we're going to talk about a California sober trend piece in the Wall Street Journal with our resident California soberian, Jen Briney. All that plus your emails. Let's go ahead and just get into this story. The U.S.-Ukraine relations had itself a week, friends. On Friday, a contentious meeting between President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in the Oval Office ended abruptly without the anticipated signing of a critical minerals agreement. The confrontation led to the suspension of U.S. military aid to Ukraine, a move that has raised concerns amongst European allies within Ukraine itself. In response, President Zelenskyy expressed regret over the incident and reaffirmed Ukraine's commitment to peace negotiations under U.S. leadership. He proposed initial steps, including a prisoner exchange, bans on missiles and drone attacks, and to de-escalate tensions with Russia. Additionally, Zelenskyy indicated readiness to finalize the minerals deal, emphasizing its importance for Ukraine's economic stability and security. European leaders have shown solidarity with Ukraine, expressing concerns over the U.S. aid suspension and its implication in regional security. In light of these developments, European nations are considering increased spending and support for Ukraine. Then comes the report on Tuesday that indeed Ukraine would sign the minerals deal and that Donald Trump would mention it in the joint address to Congress that evening. He did not, and believe it was Bloomberg that reported that Trump is now holding out for a bigger deal that would be based on the terms of the mineral deal. And that's just right now, Wednesday at 11:38 a.m. Central Time. Obviously, a fast moving story. We're going to start with you, Mr. Andrew Heaton. What?
Right. Good question. Good question. I thought there was more to that. I actually think that that's a very good question of just what.
Just what?
Let me preface this, listeners at home. When I'm looking at some story, particularly any story involving Trump, but really stories in general, I try to come up with different lenses to look at them through. So there's the 3D chess or the 4D chess lens, right? We talked a little bit about that last week, where I think with the 5 bullet points that Elon Musk was requiring all federal employees to email him, I think that he was playing 4D chess in the sense that what he really wanted to do was get federal workers to say, I don't have to justify my job to you, and because he wanted to piss off. So it was an attempt to do something on a larger unseen level, right? I go through there's bad faith, there's good faith. I have like a category that I go through of, if this was just about petulant egos, is this what this would look like? So my analysis of this is swung back and forth, and I'll lead you through some of these filters, and then I'll lead you to what my final thoughts on this are. With the 3D chess filter or the 4D chess filter.
Mm-hmm. Can't leave the D out.
Can't leave the D out. It's all about the D.
Yep.
With the 4D chess filter, it is my understanding, I haven't read it, I suppose I should, but it's my understanding that in the art of the deal, Trump talks about how a very basic negotiation technique is to get everything lined up, shake hands, we just have to sign the thing, and then invent some bullshit reason to scuttle it at the last minute. And that throws the other guy on his back foot, and then you can negotiate from a better position. And so I'm always on the lookout for this when Trump is trying to arrange some kind of deal, that he's going to suddenly renege and everything will go to shit. So it's possible that happened, that what occurred last week was a weird negotiation tactic that we wanted to put Zelenskyy on his back feet. It's possible that it's 5D chess, that the mineral deal we never gave a shit about. We just wanted to just signal something to Russia, and that all of that was just some sort of curtain for it. I won't go through all of the filters, but the petulant ego filter, which was initially what I thought this was what if Trump foreign policy really is just to give lulls and likes to edgelords and angry conservatives? I think the Gulf of Mexico thing, or excuse me, Gulf of America thing is that. I think it's just an ego win. But what I think is happening right now, though, this is where I settle in terms of what happened last week. What I think is actually happening here, having gone through and watched the entirety of that press conference, because I didn't want to get
the Oval Office meeting, which is not technically the press conference. There was supposed to be a press conference after the signing, but Donald Trump takes so many questions from the Oval Office that it turns into an impromptu.
Yeah, and it was full of press. I guess I get why you would say that.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Thank you. But I wanted to watch it in its entirely. I didn't want to get Covington High Schooled again. Where, whenever you see something really exacerbatory and you don't see the greater context in it, you should be suspicious. I think this is what's happening. I think that Zelenskyy doesn't want a ceasefire for understandable tactical reasons. I think what Zelenskyy is thinking is, if we do a ceasefire, that's just going to give Russia more time to recoup, to build up to take a breather, build up their resources, and they'll be back and they'll gobble us up. So a ceasefire is not a good thing for me, Zelenskyy, and Ukraine long term. What I want is continued funding from America, continued weapons from America, and ideally I want to somehow get Europe and or America to commit some kind of military strength to me where I can actually push the Russians out, or at the very least guarantee that they're not going to move anymore. I think that's what's going on with Zelenskyy. I think what's going on in the Republican camp is that Trump does want to get a deal made. He wants to end the fight between Russia and Ukraine. I think that that's where his basic desires are, is be the deal breaker between the broker, the moderator between these two camps. I think that the Republican establishment working with Trump viewed the mineral rights deal as a way to kind of back end this. It gives Trump something he can brag about, where he can go to the American people and go, hey, we're going to continue supporting Ukraine, but look, we're going to get this joint slush fund of mineral rights money that we got out of it. So I'm winning on your behalf. It's not America committing to an endless war. I'm getting something out of that. And because we would have a mineral rights deal with Ukraine where we would have financial incentives and we would have our own companies operating over there, it would end up back-ending us into a security agreement with Ukraine, which is what both the Republican establishment wants and what the Ukrainians want. So I think that that's kind of what's happening. Is Trump wants to broker a ceasefire and a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine wants more than that. And then you add egos into this equation and it all goes to shit. I having now watched the video, I don't think that this was a carefully choreographed 5D chess maneuver. I initially kind of thought that because J.D. Vance seems to come out of nowhere. But having watched the video, J.D. Vance is prompted by Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy goes, hey, can I talk to you about this for a minute? What do you mean? So it's not that Vance just sits there quietly and then all of a sudden goes, okay, here's my prescripted moment. I think he's invited into it and just three egos start derailing everything. At that point, the first 3 quarters of their joint conference, I thought Trump comported himself very well. The first 3 quarters, because Trump is going back to, look, we want to avoid World War III. We want people to quit dying on both sides of the field. I am trying to be a broker between these two powers, which is what I want him to do, by the way. Then once the ego gets involved, it all goes to shit, where now it turns into this weird rhetorical grudge match of, you've not thanked us hard enough. You didn't wear a suit to the Oval Office, and a bunch of ego window dressing. And I think it derailed the whole operation. And that's about where I wind up at. I think Ukraine doesn't want to have just a ceasefire. They're afraid that they'll end up getting gobbled up by Russia. Trump wants to end the conflict, and the amount of egos that were in the room, particularly from Donald Trump, ended up just kind of derailing the whole thing and turning it into a screaming match.
Jen?
So looking at the meeting itself, I agree with you that egos are involved in that whole thing, obviously. But I think we also have to remember the history between especially Trump and Zelenskyy. Like, he got impeached over a phone call with this particular man, during which Trump was bullying Zelenskyy, trying to get him to dig up dirt on the Bidens. Zelenskyy didn't do it. Biden wins the election. So I think there's just a lot of history there and a lot of bad blood, especially Trump towards Zelenskyy, that probably prompted this. And then also Zelenskyy, like, you can see when Trump's brain breaks, it's after Zelenskyy says, well, you know, you've had this ocean that's protected you, but it's not always going to protect you. You're going to feel this someday. And Trump goes, you don't know what we're going to feel. It was
How dare you tell me what to feel?
Yeah, that's what
it was. The second time that he made that point too. Trump let it slide the first time, and then the second time is when it was when there was the back and forth between Vance and.
Well, and it's a very European point to make. Like, the European countries want to continue the support for Ukraine because they keep saying that if they lose the territory in Ukraine, then they're going to take over. The Russians will take over Lithuania and then Poland, and then they'll march across, and then eventually to go across the ocean, and they'll have the whole world. Like, so it's like it's on brand with a European leader to say something like that. But Trump just, I don't know if he took it as a threat or whatever it was, but that was the moment that he just lost it on him. So I think, like, he just personally doesn't like Zelenskyy, and that was a big part of how that meeting went. But when I look at this on just kind of like a bigger scale, I do think, and I've thought this since 2014, that the prize in Ukraine has always been their natural resources. Like, right now we're focused on the minerals. And I do think that Elon probably has, it's interesting because it used to be their agricultural riches and their fossil fuel riches. And now it's really switched to minerals. And Elon, who owns Tesla, which needs
minerals,
lithium.
dog.
Yeah, they need the lithium. And like, yeah, so I think that might be one of the reasons we've really switched to the minerals. But there's really there's a lot of stuff that Ukraine has. And when you look at the territory that's been taken, there is a lot of fossil fuel wealth and a lot of mineral wealth that's actually on the Russian side of this.
Mm-hmm.
So Trump does want to make a deal with Ukraine, but I'm guessing he also wants to make a deal with Russia because Russia has fossil fuels and minerals as well. And I know that he wants to have a better relationship with Russia. So I feel like this is messaging not only to Zelenskyy that like Trump is the bully, you will do what I say, but it's also messaging to Russia that we've been supporting Ukraine during the Biden administration, but this is a different thing. Our support for Ukraine is not so ironclad that we're not also willing to partner with Russia on certain things as well. So I think it's a double messaging. It's Ukraine, we're not really that much with you. And then Russia, we might be willing to partner with you. And I just have one more thing to say, which is that I've been watching international news about this. And I actually think the biggest repercussion is that Europe in particular saw that, and just Trump's behavior in general, as, oh my God, we can't count on the United States anymore. Like the United States made these promises. We really can't trust the United States for more than 4 years. We don't know if we can trust them for our security at all. We need to start beefing up our military because Ukraine really is screwed if the US doesn't give them security guarantees.
Yeah.
And like Andrew said, if we do get this mineral deal, we're going to have to give them security guarantees just in order to protect our own companies that are going to be in there trying to dig up all of these natural resources. But Europe doesn't have a military that is capable of fighting this fight. And so Europe is now looking at this. And for the first time, really, they seem to be going like, holy shit, we need to take care of ourselves. And I think just on a macro level, like, I think that is really the big story.
Is that
here.
a good or a bad thing?
I think for Europe, it's probably long overdue. I think it's weird that they've been dependent on us for so long. But at the same time, we get something very important out of having allies in this world. And I'm really concerned about how isolationist this is. So for Europe, I think it's probably a good move. Although in the interim, while they don't have a military, they are in a pretty dangerous situation if Trump does intend to pull back entirely out of NATO and out of Ukraine. But 10 years from now, if Europe is able to defend themselves, they might be better off. I don't think we're better off, but they might be. Yeah.
My read on it, and I largely agree with most of what you guys are saying, but let's look at Zelenskyy, right? And so I'm not here to make an argument that he's, the worst caricature that some people on the right, like the Tucker Carlson set, want to make him into this, arms dealing cokehead or something like that. I think he's an admirable person who's put in a very, very unique situation, a hard situation to deal with. But one of the things that he has done that is unique for world leaders is he has been unafraid to put his face into the buzzsaw of American politics. He has played an active role in American politics, more so than many people, because usually foreign leaders don't like to meddle in American politics because it's a lot easier for an American politician to tank a foreign politician's career than it is for a foreign politician to tank an American politician's career, just because we have an outside place in the world stage. Zelenskyy has, he stayed largely out of that Trump impeachment thing, but past that, he thought he was going to get a more favorable deal with Biden. When he didn't, when Nord Stream 2 was approved, he was tweeting at Ted Cruz, talking about what a great guy Ted Cruz was. Not something you normally do when you are somebody who is the president of Ukraine. He has obviously been very active in American politics. Biden apparently called him an asshole on a call once because he was asking for more aid the day after he got an aid package passed that was politically painful for the Biden White House to do. And, he did go, JD Vance pointed this out. I don't think it was necessarily a great moment in American statecraft for when Vance pointed it out, but it is true nonetheless that Zelenskyy it wasn't a campaign visit that Bob Casey and Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania were touring a munitions factory with Vladimir Zelenskyy, but it was 3 weeks away from an election when Ukraine is a political issue. So he's been unafraid to do it. What I think happened now, and I agree with Heaton's read on this, is that he overplayed his hand. He doesn't, time's out. It's over. Like,
are you saying he didn't have the cards?
He fucking didn't. He fucking didn't have the cards. Look, like the way that he was going to get in this American ecosystem guarantees going forward was this mineral deal. And by the way, it was a mineral deal that he pitched as part of a 5-point plan that the Trump administration took as this all-you-can-eat sushi menu, not a we have to do all 5 things, because the number 1 thing was we get into NATO. And then number 4 was we'll do a mineral deal. And the Trump administration looked at that and they're like, cool, we'll take 4, we'll take 2. Go ahead and sign the deal.
We like the minerals. We don't like the permanent commitment to escalate to World War III in the event that there's a border conflict between you and Russia.
Yes, which is currently happening and was happening before this incursion, by the way. So not only did Ukraine negotiate this deal, after that, we had both the president of France and the prime minister of the United Kingdom come to America off schedule to make sure that this was the deal that got signed, because Europe desperately needs this deal to get signed, because as much as they can all go meet and take their selfies together, but they need American money. The plan is America has the mineral deal. And by the way, some of those areas, like you pointed out, are in disputed territory. So a peace deal for us to prove out on this money-wise is going to require Russia ceding certain ground so we can take advantage of it.
Well, even a lot, there's a significant amount of the Ukrainian territory that has the minerals that is so close to that border.
Yes.
So even if we don't have Russia give anything back, it's so close that you're going to have boots on the ground.
Yes.
You have to.
You're going to have to. And by the way, it's not that sweet of a deal for us. It's the carve out is Ukraine gets everything they're getting right now. They still get 100% of, and then it's 50% of what we can get on top of that. I think that's a pretty decent deal to get Donald Trump to go ahead along with that. Anyway, Zelenskyy, I think, was too persistent, and it wasn't great American statecraft to land the plane, but also this is Europe and Ukraine's problem more than it is ours, quite frankly.
Yeah, can I swing back, Justin, to an earlier question you asked of is this a good thing if Europe starts militarizing? Here's the heat and pitch. If I were president, this is what I would pitch to Europe. The United States is a part of the same civilization as you. We have shared values as Europe. We are great partners, and I want to keep it that way. And so here's the deal that we're going to have. We will guarantee the sanctity of your borders with the full might of the American military, which we will continue to deploy to Europe. We will continue to put you in our nuclear umbrella, and we will have our people on the ground, and you're going to take care of our healthcare. You're really good at that. Every time I talk to Europeans, the first thing you want to talk about is your wonderful welfare state and how great your healthcare is compared to America. Now, I think the reason you have that is largely because we've been taking care of your military for the last 50 years, and you've been able to use the money you otherwise would have been spending on the military to build up your healthcare. That's terrific. I don't actually want to end that. What I want to do is extend that deal both ways, and maybe we quit thinking about things in this sort of Westphalian nation state mindset of we're different countries. We specialize a little bit. So you guys are going to fund and administer our public health care, and we're going to take care of your military. Now, absent that, if you don't want to do that, which would be my preference, but if you don't want to do that, we're going to stay
heads
allies.
up. Sometimes when you fuck that up, we shoot you, but go ahead.
We're going to stay allies. We will maintain our mutual defense pact, and you will stay in the American nuclear umbrella, but we're not going to keep troops over there. So if there's ever a conflict, we will come to your aid, but we're going to cross the ocean to get there because we're not going to have permanently stationed troops in Germany. We're not going to have permanently stationed troops and ballistic missiles in Poland. That's beyond what our commitment's going to be. We're allies with you, but we don't have to be doing your military for you. So you're going to do your own military, but we'll join you. Again, we have a defense pact, right? I'm fine with that. I think both of those are preferable deals. The arguments that I've heard against that from the American perspective tend to be something like, do you really want the Germans getting good at weapons again? That, for the last 50 years, the Germans have put their incredible ingenuity into industrial manufacturing and chemicals and toys and computers, and better them doing that than weapons. And I'm not worried about the Germans. And I don't think that America should be on the hook for the bulk of European military forever. Europe has a bigger population than we do. The European Union has a bigger population than we do. I think that they're capable of doing the heavy lifting on this. Not saying we should quit being allies with them. I'm just saying we shouldn't be doing their work for them.
Yeah, I think ultimately this does come down to one very simple question. Do you believe that Ukraine can either win this war or meaningfully change what would be the glide path to a deal now, which you can pretty much see the outline of? And if the answer is yes, what would it take? What is the outlay that would need to happen? And I do think that there's a part of Zelenskyy that's like, hey, all I need is like just a small amount of 500,000 troops from, the coalition of the willing. And we can push them out in a long weekend, bada bing, bang, boom. Then we can start talking about a peace deal and we've put Putin back in his place. I think that's a bridge too far, certainly for America. Although, by the way, in that press conference, Donald Trump did not close the door on American boots on the ground for a peacekeeping force. He recommitted to NATO. He said we would continue to ship arms, although he said he hoped that it wouldn't be for long because they wanted a peace deal, and did not close the door on American boots on the ground. And that's where it's like when the dialogue around this was like, oh, it's a trap, and it's, this is a disgusting humiliation of Zelenskyy by the Putin puppet Trump. It's like, that's kind of weird to me when he's recommitting to NATO and saying that American boots are going to be on the ground for a peacekeeping force. Like that seems like an odd way to do that while you have a menu for lunch where the American and Ukrainian flags are intertwined together and you're about to sign this deal that would financially tie us to that country and to the protection of minerals that we would have to have. Like, I don't know, that was an element that I found a little bit.
Justin, I think you've hit the nail on the head of the truly relevant question in all of this is, can Ukraine actually push Russia out of Ukraine? If it can push Russia out of Ukraine, then the position that the United States needs to absolutely and unquestionably provide material support until the end of the conflict makes a lot of sense. If you don't think that Ukraine can actually put Russia out, then all we're doing is prolonging death until an actual peace agreement is reached that probably neither party will like in particular. And I think what Ukraine, my guess is what Zelensky's probably rooting for. If I were Zelenskyy, I would just be holding out in hopes that Putin would die and a regime change might change the situation, or that Putin would die and that or get ousted from power or something, but maybe something radically would change. But I am skeptical that they're going to be able to push the Russians out. And for that reason, I am very much worried that we're just dragging out collateral damage, and I want to end the conflict.
Well, dragging out the collateral damage was the Biden administration's strategy.
Yes.
If you want to hear this for yourself, there was testimony to Congress. It's in my episode called Keeping Ukraine, I think is when we heard it. But their strategy the whole time was to have this war go on so that Russia would have to expend lots of money, lots of lives, a lot of their weapons. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But like they wanted Russia to deplete their military so much fighting in Ukraine that Russia would either have a regime change happen because their own people would get upset at their government, or Russia would just be so weak that they can't be a player on the world stage anymore. Because during the Obama-Biden administration, Russia got involved in our regime change in Syria, and they were really, really pissed about that. And then we have to remember that in Ukraine, there was a regime change that happened in 2014. The new government, we decided to prop it up with money, and we built them a military. The entire time since then, there had been a civil war raging pretty much in the same exact territory that there's been this war happening right now. The war right now is bigger. So Russia will send bombs into Kyiv, and they've conquered some more territory. They've leveled some cities. Like, it's obviously worse now. But for 8 years, there was a civil war in this territory. And there was an agreement, the Minsk
1 and Minsk 2.
Yes, there were these agreements where that territory over in the east was supposed to be kind of neutral. Like Ukraine would still control it, still be theirs, but it would be neutral. So that territory, I mean, Crimea has been gone since 2014.
Yes.
Every expert will tell you they were never getting Crimea back. And Zelenskyy will still say that's one of the goals. So it's like anyone who's being realistic about this knows that Russia's getting some territory out of this. Crimea specifically, but probably that no man's land where they were fighting over this for 8 years before the invasion. Like, that was always going to be a part of it. And so I do see what Trump is doing here is stopping the death. And I do think that is one of the most reprehensible things about what Biden had done for the last 4 years is that we never armed Ukraine enough for them to win the war because that was never our goal. That's disgusting. So at least this point, we're not saying that we're going to give them all the arms they need to win the war. We're just saying it's got to stop. These are your new borders. It's over. And I mean, in a perfect world, would I like Ukraine to get all of their territory back? Yes. It's not going to happen. So I do think that I despise Trump, but I do think he's onto something here where it's like this needs to stop sooner than later. But I am also disgusted by the naked imperialism of, okay, we're going to help you, but give us all your minerals. Like we've spent $100 billion, and that's a lot, in Ukraine. We're demanding $500 billion worth of minerals. This is generations worth of wealth for the Ukrainian people that we are demanding be given to our multinational corporations. So it's extortion. It's gross.
I mean, they pitched it. It was Ukraine's pitch.
Well, no, the exchange of minerals, the idea, that was the pitch. The $500 billion worth, that is something that they're fighting back against. Because what Zelenskyy said, and he's correct, he's like, I don't want to sign my country up for a deal that 10 years from now, my country's still going to have to be paying. And if they don't want to, I don't like it. So he's trying to find
you want to know what
a different number.
Boris Johnson pointed out when he was talking about why this was a good deal for the Ukrainians that, and I did not know this, but Boris Johnson is a World War II aficionado and a former prime minister. So I would provincially trust him on it. That apparently Britain was still paying us on some level for Lend-Lease, like into the 2000s.
Yeah.
And he was like, you want to know what? We'd still do Lend-Lease. Like Lend-Lease was a good idea for us then. Yes, we were paying for it into the 2000s. It was the deal to make at the time, and the Americans were there to make it.
Well, and it appears that Zelensky's now being like, I'm going to give you whatever the fuck you want.
Well, because he should have done it. I mean, like that's where it comes back to me with this is that it's like that was the deal to make then. Like,
wait, yeah. So can you all? I tried looking into the deal. Excuse me, the details of this deal. I did not do exhaustive enough research to uncover it. So, like, I would be fine with and would have zero moral qualms with the deal is American companies are allowed to do business in terms of mineral exploration and mining. Not that anybody has to do it, but that we're allowed to come work over there. That would be fine. I think that would be very good for the Ukrainians because capital would come in, investment would come in, and also we need rare earth minerals if we want to have renewable energy. So like I'm fine with opening doors, but that's not what the deal is.
Especially because the only other place that has it in abundance is Russia. So we're either buying it from them or we're buying it from Russia.
There's a strategic reason for us to do it, particularly if you're worried about climate change. But my thing is I don't want to compel anybody to do anything, but I'm happy to open markets. Is the deal that they're proposing, we can go in and we can our companies are allowed to go do it, or is it specifically they are committing X amount of resources to the tune of X billion dollars that we own until they pay it back?
It is opening it up so American companies can exploit it.
So it's not that they're on the hook for a particular amount of money.
My understanding of it is that we are guaranteed $500 billion worth of their minerals. And so our companies will go in and get them, obviously. But my understanding of it is like Trump wants payback for what?
Yeah.
So it's not like we're going to go in and
Can you elaborate on
well, so
that
here's the thing. Like, I can't. No one can. These are deals that are fluid, so I can't give you details. But my understanding of it is not, we're going to go in and compete in an open market that, other companies can come in. Like, my understanding is Trump wants American companies get these minerals. Yeah. This is the amount that we're going to get.
No, it is not an open market. No. It would be a closed market for which we have access. And I don't know what the 500 billion number is on it. I don't know whether that's a cap. I don't know.
And that's changing all the time too.
I think the cap is pertinent, right? Because if it's like basically like a lease agreement of you're allowed to live here for a year, but you don't have to. That's different than we're going to give you X amount of money. Like saying we promise that your companies can come in and they have the ability to get $500 billion worth of minerals mined. We'll commit to, we will not restrict you until that cap is hit, is different than we owe you $500 billion of taxes that are going to this joint fund. Like we are committing the resources of the state is different than you have X amount of runway in terms of mining.
My understanding is that it's the latter, but I say that with The
Nobody
recognition that I
knows.
could totally be wrong. We don't really know what these deals
Okay.
are because they're changing every
Nobody
hour.
knows. What we do know is that the Ukrainians are not necessarily balking at that part. They're balking at the idea that they would be making this deal that obviously the United States wants without getting what they really want, which is security guarantees.
Yes.
What they want are guarantees that if one Russian foot steps over this line, then you will react with X force. That is what they want. What Trump is saying is, well, this is the security guarantee because we are, some of these mines are right next to the borderline where the war is happening. So if Russia comes westward, then we're going to be involved one way or another because we have this thing here. And also this is all right, fully into Trumpology now. Like, this is what I'm guessing. When he seems very blithe about like Russia wants to make a deal, I think I can make a deal very, very quickly. What I think he is saying is that Russia's economy right now will probably collapse the day that the war ends, because now they will not have an excuse to paper over the problems that they have with the economy. They also have a population problem because they brought so many people into war. So many people have died. They have a currency problem. We have no idea at what point they will normalize relationships for gas sales to Europe, stuff like that. What Donald Trump is saying is, what if I helped you avoid that? I helped you avoid a total economic meltdown. I brought more aggressively than the Biden administration would or any other administration would sanctions off of you. You had an ability to access the Western world in a way that would possibly stabilize your economy. And in exchange, you are more aggressive than you would be otherwise about giving up territory. But he can't.
Are you talking about Russia here?
Russia, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That is what, when he says like Putin wants to make a deal, I talked to him. It's when he's very blithe about that, about like, it's going to be quick. I think that's what he is dangling. What he is dangling is that we will help the Russian economy, and in exchange, you are going to give a deal that is better. Now, none of that can be said out loud, obviously. And also that's one of Trump's biggest bugaboos, is that he hates when politicians make deals and announce them while they're in mid negotiation, because he feels that it's giving away leverage. But that is what I guess. That is a total guess on my part as to where the state of play is.
Seems like an educated one.
Hey, before we move on to another topic, can I head up some email real quick that we're going to get in relation to this? Because this happens every single time Jen and or Heaton talk about Ukraine. Ukraine is a sovereign country. I do not think that the United States should order them around. I think that they get to make their own decisions. I do not think that they are a puppet. The United States is a sovereign country, and we are completely in control and should be in control of the resources that we allocate to other countries. So Ukraine can do whatever it wants, and I'm very supportive of Ukraine, but that doesn't mean that we are permanently committed to doing whatever they want with our money. And what we're talking about today is the American side of this, not the Ukrainian side. The second thing that I will point out to head up some email is this. I am fucking pro-peace, and the default is peace for me. You have to talk me into war. My default is peace. Talk me into war. That's where I'm seated here. So when we get into these conversations,
Sounds like Russian propaganda, Tucker.
There's a good argument to be made that I'm a Neville Chamberlain character, and that I'm going to sleepwalk us into a Hitlerian scenario. They're very, very smart people that believe that. But the default is peace. You got to talk me out of it, and I don't. I think it's good. I felt the same way with like what was it, Rashida Tlaib and some of the squad that was pitching peace stuff, and everybody got pissed off at her. I like if the default is peace. I like if the default is ceasefires. That's talk me out of that, but that's where I'm going to naturally gravitate towards.
I agree with every word of that. And I also want to point out that a lot of times when I'm saying things, it's not because I agree with them. I'm just explaining what my country is doing. And so it's like when I look at the picture in Ukraine, really since 2014, but like more so now than ever, Ukraine is dependent on us. Their economy is completely gutted. And if you read these bills that have funded Ukraine, military assistance is only one piece of it.
No, we're funding their government.
Their whole government.
Yes.
Yeah. Their healthcare, their teachers, we're funding all of it. So the idea that Ukraine is a sovereign country, sure, but they are completely dependent on us. And so there is a I think a responsibility there to do right by the Ukrainian people, because the Biden administration did make promises. And so for Trump to come in and pull the rug out, like that is a really shameful place for us to be. And so that's also what I'm thinking. Like as the United States, there should be some continuity in policy between administration to administration.
Sure. Okay.
And so I really don't like, as much as I do want peace, like I really don't want us completely abandoning Ukraine because we made promises and they decided to fight, believing that we would be there in the ways that we said we would. So
I don't disagree with you on that, Jen. I think that we have an obligation to honor commitments that we've made, particularly if somebody's dependent on it. What I mean more is that when I start talking about whether we're prolonging the conflict or trying to end the conflict by not allocating resources to it, I will get lots of feedback of like, how dare you, Ukraine is a sovereign country. And I'm like, right, I'm not saying that they can't broker treaties. What I'm saying is that us prolonging a military conflict. But in terms of like honoring agreements that we've had, if they've got programs on life support, yanking them, yes, I don't disagree with you there in terms of having continuity, Pottery Barn rules, you break it, you buy it, etc.
Well, yeah. And like the idea that yes, they're a sovereign country. If they want to continue fighting the war, like you do you. The problem is they can't do it without us.
Yeah.
So we do get a say in this.
Exactly.
Like,
that's
my
point.
Literal rocks and slingshots.
Yeah.
One thing I would change about NATO, by the way, because like people will rightly point out the charter of NATO is we take anybody that wants to be admitted to it. If anybody wants to join NATO, we will just admit them. Like that's part of I think that's a bad idea. I don't think we should have an open-ended commitment to any country on the planet. I don't think that that's strategically viable. So when it comes to our blood and treasure, and that's something that we do get a say in.
Yeah. I think one last kind of galaxy-brained point that has kind of emerged. If we really look, one of the things you hear a lot about when there's any conversation about not pouring everything that we possibly have into Ukraine is China's watching. China's watching and they're looking at Taiwan and they're understanding how we handle Ukraine is how we would handle Taiwan.
Yeah.
To which I would say, I agree with you halfway. Yes, China's watching. Also, if we are looking in our lifetime at a possible world war wherein the principles are China versus the United States, do we want Russia on China's side? Or do we want Russia on the Western side? Mm-hmm. And I think that you can hold two thoughts in your head when you understand, as I do, that Vladimir Putin is a barbarous thug and can't be trusted and is a loathsome character who should not be rewarded for things that he has done. And also say, boy, would I really like Sino-Russian relations to be at an all-time low if and when it really comes down to it between the United States and China. And that is something that is on the plus side of an argument of, despite the fact that it is ugly and hard to swallow, that Russia should be reintegrated into the Western world in a way that they have been cut out since the invasion.
Okay, now I'm going to get full on fucking George Kennan here. We had a shot with that, by the way. The Soviet Union got rid of the Warsaw Pact. They got rid of their anti-Western military alliance when the Soviet Union collapsed. And the collapse of the Soviet Union was one of the greatest boons to mankind ever. It was one of the greatest things that's ever happened in human history, was the collapse of the Soviet Union. We should have been applauding the Russian people for having a peaceful transition out of fucking communist thuggery. We should have been assisting them at that time. We should have been going, this is great. Our problem wasn't with Russia. Our problem wasn't with the Russian people. Our problem was the fucking communists. And when the communists left, the main issue that we had with them dissipated as well. That was a golden opportunity for us to do that. There's a great film, one of the greatest films of all time, called The Undiscovered Country, where a hostile military power collapses and the Federation has an opportunity to go in and restrike the balance. And they do. And that's what we should have done.
Yeah. And of course, that's going to get emails because that is like, oh, well, fucking, of course. You were on RT. What did they tell you? What are they paying you? But
yeah, you know what? I'm on the team as all the old fucking Cold War guys. Like the dudes that were like, the Soviet Union's evil and we got to fight the Cold War.
Yeah,
when it collapsed, these are all the same guys going, okay, great. We won, everybody. We won. Time to reset
NATO
it.
should not be 1 inch eastward. Like there are broken promises for which
George Kennan was not a Russian asset, for Christ's sake.
I don't think the world would be a worse place if we simmered down the enemies list that we have. I don't think it's a bad thing if we have better relationships with Russia and China. I don't think Trump is going to be doing anything to make us better off with China, but if he can mend our relationship a little bit with Russia, I'm not entirely opposed to it.
If James T. Kirk could come around on the Klingons, then I think America and Russia can one day be friends.
If you can change, then we can change.
You know,
That's another movie. That's Rocky. You fucking nerd. That's how you talk about Russia in this house. Patreon.com/we're not wrong. This week we are talking about tariffs. So if you are excited about Heaton getting a full boner, then get ready because we're talking tariffs. The other big story in Trump world this week on our Patreon exclusive episode, patreon.com/we're not wrong. Get a bonus episode each and every week. 2 episodes for the price of 1 because you don't pay for 1. But if you bought 1, then you get 2. Let's talk about California sober. There is a new California sober trend piece in the Wall Street Journal. Quote, Lauren Breck, who previously worked in nightlife, from said article. I was so programmed to have fun with alcohol, everything became centered around it. Alcohol damaged her health and emotional well-being, according to this piece, prompting her to move to Southern California in 2019. She reduced her drinking and began experimenting with psychedelics, hosting alcohol-free parties featuring mushroom chocolates and mocktails. Now California sober is a phase or trend where alcohol is largely off the table, but psychedelics play a big role. The lifestyle is gaining popularity, particularly by Surgeon General Vivek Murthy's advisory linking alcohol to cancer risks. Arata Oven, a psychedelic guide, noted this shift. Individuals are choosing what resonates instead of what might be at the party. Oven, who hasn't had alcohol since November, regularly uses psychedelics like ayahuasca and microdoses intuitively. Eventbrite recorded a 92% rise in sober curious events from 23 to 24. And Jeff Chen, formerly of UCLA's Center for Cannabis, observed increased interest in alternatives like cannabis, psilocybin, and ketamine, although warned about potential health risks. Jen, you are by far the most California sober among us. What did you think of this trend piece?
I'm not a huge fan of it because it basically makes us seem like we're a bunch of drug addicts, which is not like I embrace the term because when someone tells me they're sober, I hear, oh, you do nothing.
Yes.
You know, and so for me, one of the ways when I was like, for people that don't know, I haven't had alcohol in
3 years?
2 years. No,
the midterms.
2 years.
It was the 22 midterms.
22 midterms. Yeah. That's when I went partying with Justin and I decided I was done.
Yeah. It was a wrap.
Yeah. So it's been a minute. And so one of the things that I definitely relate to is I was so programmed to have fun with alcohol, everything became centered around it.
Yes.
And that was very much how I felt, like every social occasion. And, you know, it's still a struggle, to be honest with you, because so many other people have their lives centered around alcohol that I find that like I have this wonderful community I play volleyball with here, but they don't invite us to do the after party type stuff because we don't drink. And this has been going on for 2 years. So it's socially, it's kind of difficult. And so the way that that's
why the drinking, that's why you're not invited.
I know. I just realized what I said. It's like, no, maybe they just don't like
it's nothing else. Dumb. It's definitely just the alcohol.
Yeah. Maybe they just like playing volleyball with you and then they want you to fuck
Get
off.
Right out of here.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, we figured that out.
I don't think, I mean, like we can joke around, but I do think that there is a barrier. And not even necessarily a like, oh, ew, don't invite them, they don't drink kind of way, but just in a, well, like, is that going to be weird? Is anyone going to get offended? Like,
well, it's like inviting me golfing. I don't want
Yeah.
to fucking golf. I don't golf. So it's like, why would you invite me to just like stand there while you do an activity I'm not going to do?
Yeah.
So I'm not offended by it, but it is a thing. It is a life adjustment.
Yes.
And so one of the ways that I did deal with that is when I did go out to bars and stuff, I would have my little 5 milligram microdosed gummies. And when I think California sober, I'm thinking cannabis because that's what's legal there. For me, it was never like, I've never done ayahuasca and I'm not taking shitloads of shrooms and tripping out. Like I'm not replacing alcohol with something that gets me just as fucked up. Like it's just that every once in a while I'll have a 5 milligram gummy or I'll like microdose on mushrooms. So that's like the music is more fun to dance to, but like I'm not replacing something that was poisoning me with something that gets me just as fucked up. And actually, as the time has gone by, I've started to really enjoy sobriety. Like I really don't use much of anything. And so when I use the term California sober, it's just to let people know who are like sober that like, oh no, like if you hang out with me, like I might be on a little bit of something.
But also yours is kind of even stealthy because you don't like smoke weed. Like you're not gonna like pull out a joint and be like, I'm smoking weed now, like, which is its own imposition into a social setting. You're like, oh, just so you know, I might be on a 5 milligram edible, but also you're not the kind of person that's going to even show that if you wouldn't know it. Heaton?
I'm with Jen on this. Don't call this California sober.
No.
This is California's not a good brand right now. Like California. Like if you put California
sober, I'm off alcohol, but I'm on fentanyl.
Right. Like
That's what this sounded like.
For example, like there was some product that I bought that I don't remember what it was, but it had like on the label like might be cancerous, and I kind of worried. And Abby, who you all knew, went it's California cancer. Like as a way of going like this is like overly protective, ridiculous regulations. You can dismiss it. It's California. California being
every restaurant in California has a sign by law in the window that says this restaurant might give you cancer.
So does every parking lot.
Yeah.
And every housing build, when I got an apartment out there, every single apartment complex had a sign up front saying that there are chemicals in here that cause cancer. And it's so California becomes a byline for dismiss whatever I'm about to say.
Yes.
Call it Burning Man sober. That's what you should call it. Equally irritating, but more clear and to the point. I'm not drinking alcohol, but I'm fucked up on LSD. So it is fine. I take 2 Quaaludes and a hit of acid every time I do the show, and I knock it out of the goddamn park. But I wouldn't call it California sober. I'd call it Heaton sober.
It is this almost like Naked Gun level joke of like somebody sitting at a bar with a glass of whiskey and a guy's like, whoa, don't drink that. That'll kill you. And then pulls out a crack pipe and just like fires it up.
And look, before you read this, like when you heard this term California sober, were you thinking of it more like I have been using it as in like, yeah, I'll dabble with things, but like I'm pretty sober. Or is it like I've replaced, if I tell someone randomly like, oh yeah, I'm California sober, do you think people are assuming that I am doing ayahuasca trips and like down a K-hole most of the time?
No, everybody that I know that describes themselves as California sober are usually, like, this is my personal experience, which might also tell about my friend group, but like they are all people for whom had personal challenges with alcohol. I would say recovery, but that usually like intimates that there was like some kind of formal kind of process to it, but they didn't think alcohol was great for them. They went through some kind of trial and now they are very much enjoying being sober, but they also like to smoke weed.
Yeah.
Like, and that's that. It's
Jimmy
it's more,
Buffett sober. Yeah. I don't know. Cheech and Chong's. No, I'm trying to think of what the.
Ooh, Jimmy Buffett sober would work.
Yeah, Buffett sober.
Because he's not about like ayahuasca and ketamine and Crichton and all this shit. Like the list of drugs they had in here, I was like, I'm not doing that stuff.
Burning Man minus alcohol is what that article is. But again, I just the California. If I told you I was California monogamous, like don't do that. You're not going to help.
Yeah, you only fuck other people when Mercury's in retrograde. You're California monogamous.
I'm in an open relationship versus like California monogamous. Like there's masks involved. Like it's just like it doesn't help.
Exactly. California monogamous is that your polycule has a 6-person hard cap. Like we're not. I'm sorry. We have values in this house. No more than 6 people.
So, in conclusion. Can I keep using this term or should I stop because people will think
Call
I'm
it Buffett
druggy.
sober, because that's a good conversational opener too. If you say I'm Buffett sober,
Well,
people
no,
are gonna
but
be like,
Buffett
"Oh, I
sober
love Jimmy
when it's
Buffett.
like
What's that?" Make a
Margaritaville
new
is like
friend.
his famous song. Like, although you can do a virgin margarita.
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
like Buffett concerts, it was just as much a celebration of weed as it was alcohol.
Oh, totally.
Wait,
Yeah.
can I ask a
Maybe
real
Buffett
question
sober
for?
works.
I like that.
And it's Florida
Can I-
based, which I like.
Can I,
You what?
Jen, can I ask you a real question? So I did a year of sobriety that ended in January. So I didn't do it as long as you, but I about half of the span that you've
Not
got.
a contest.
It's not a contest.
If it was, I'm
but-
winning.
and if it is, Jen's winning. Yes. No,
California asshole.
It's well
Fuck you,
tanned.
Justin. The reason that I bring up this sensitive topic before Justin derailed it was that in my experience, I did not find it to be a social hindrance. I was worried about that, but I didn't find it that I ended up not getting invited to anything. I would go to a bar and I would have a non-alcoholic beer, or I would have what I call a tepid heaton, which is soda with bitters, and just nobody gave a shit. Like even when I was in Scotland, where I thought I thought I was going to have to lie. I thought I was going to have to tell my Scottish friends I'm on medication and I can't drink. They couldn't care less. Like I didn't find it to be a hindrance. Like what has your experience been?
So what I've found is that the people that I've actually crossed over to like in a real friendship with, they don't give a damn. So it's like I have a standing group of people. We go to Dave and Buster's on Wednesday nights. I'm always welcome. It's more with the people that I see a lot where acquaintances, they're having a birthday party, but I'm the non-drinker. I don't get invited to that. So it's like the making of the new friends is harder because usually it's like, let's go out for drinks and you get fucked up together and like, there's a bonding that does happen.
Maybe
when
have
you
a
drink
little
with
bit of
someone.
California monogamy.
Yeah. But it's like we miss out on those drunken nights, the bonding that happens. Like even if you don't remember what happens, you remember who you were with. You remember
Okay.
the group of party people. So that's what I'm missing out on. So it's like
Okay.
there are people that have definitely like we have a wonderful group of friends here. But it
Minus
took
Darren.
it was harder to well, I mean, you guys, you're the family. Like you guys, Darren, Eva, like your pod family, that's different.
Eva's
but
fine.
I mean, the people that I just met here, it was harder to break in because we weren't.
Okay,
doing
that's
that.
really interesting. That's a really helpful dichotomy that it's not a problem for people you're already friends with, but as a bonding mechanism, it's helpful. And that tracks. Like I think that to build relationships with people, to really build emotional intimacy, you basically have to do one of three things. You either get drunk, you go through something together, or you just spend a hell of a lot of time together, which is, I think, why you make so many friends in college, because you're either drunk or you're like, you want to play Nintendo for 3.5 days and you got the time to do it. So it's not necessary for the relationships you already have, but as a bonding mechanism, establishing new relationships is harder.
Yes, because out of those three, if you eliminate get drunk, like really what I have found has worked for us now is just spending a ton of time together. So it's really like mainly, I'm talking about the volleyball people, but it was like I would see the same people week after week after week. And then eventually it's like, hey, do you want to go get lunch after this? Or like, we are going to Dave and Buster's. Do you want to come? And it's just like we had to see them over and over and over again to get to that place where I think you can speed up that process a lot with a couple of shots one night. You know, like you take the pictures, you have the memories. It's like a wild night. You have like the stories to tell. Like it's a little different when you're just having a normal interaction.
I mean, there
once
is
a
the
week.
reality of just the social lubricant of
Yeah.
it. Like
You become more
quieter
vulnerable.
people-
Vulnerability helps.
Yeah, quieter people become louder. You know, shyer people become more bold. There's an element to it. I will say that it's now probably been easier than ever, especially in kind of a metropolitan area like, you know, Austin or DC or anything like that. I think pretty much every bar that I go to now has a alcoholic beer or non-alcoholic beer or a hop water. Like you could go to a social setting, tell the bartender, give me a best day IPA in a glass, and you would just be another person with an amber beer looking liquid in a glass that has the same head, and you would just be talking. That'd be that. I think
I
it's-
never struggle to find something to drink. And in fact, I found that mocktails taste better without poison in them. So I actually
It's just
really
sugar.
enjoy them. Yeah. Like they're just good. So yeah, the actual going to bars. And I think that's what some people,
I've been
I
drinking
think you're
and
being-
Coke since I was a kid.
I think also I like to see things from like give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I think when people hear that I don't drink, they actually don't know my story if they don't know me. So they don't know if it's she had a drinking problem, so like inviting her to the bar could be kind of a shitty gauche thing to do.
Yeah.
The people that actually know.
Maybe we're putting her into a relapse position or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like maybe we want to hang out with her, but like maybe we just invite her to lunch and not to the bar. We don't know if that's going to put her in a weird situation. And then they get to know me more and it's like, oh no, she can go to the bar. She's fine. But you don't know that until you know that.
Yeah.
So I give people the benefit of the doubt there. I don't take offense to it, but I do think that it's going to be on me more to do the initiations, do the inviting, I think is one of the things I've learned here. So yeah, it's still a process. It's a life change. It really is. It's such a integral part of so many of our social lives, especially as millennial or elder millennials or whatever the fuck we are. It's just what we did for so long. So it's hard to adjust. I'm
going to swing on behalf of California for a minute. Mushrooms are awesome. I realize I'm going to sound all druggy and Burning Man for a minute. I've taken mushrooms maybe 5 times over like 10 years, so I don't do them a whole lot. But I do think society would be a lot better. I think it would be a lot healthier if instead of getting blackout drunk, people like once a month had a minor mushroom trip. I think that you'd get the same bonding that Jen is talking about, the same level of vulnerability, minus the like fist fights, driving cars into trees, shit like that. Just like, if we were doing this all over from scratch and we were picking intoxicants, I'd say pot and mushrooms would probably be better than alcohol.
I've seen some
bad trips.
I've seen some bad times on
I know,
mushrooms.
but we're not talking about Darren. I'm joking. I'm just picking on Darren. I'm picking on you because I fucking called you, didn't call me back.
If you're tripping balls, I don't want you getting behind the wheel of a car. That's why I don't like this article.
But even
it's not a replacement for alcohol. It shouldn't be anyway.
Yeah, I wanted you to read it mostly because one of my favorite things in life, and this is an old journalist hobby of mine, is making fun of trend pieces, because trend pieces to me are always, New York Times is like the poster child of this. But I always used to joke that if you have 3 friends that are all doing the same thing, you too can write a trend piece for the New York Times. And it's like, that's where you see the putting hair binders on or putting hair ties on books. It's the latest thing. It's like, no, bitch, you got 3 friends in Williamsburg that do the same thing. And you're just going to quote them and pretend that this is some gigantic trend. And so this is an example of something that I know that you're passionate about because you've spoken so much and eloquently about your journey with alcohol, and specifically, you also have the fact that you do like to smoke weed or take edibles every once in a while. But also, it was such a cartoon of that idea of like this person's living she's made an active decision to live a healthier lifestyle, and now replacing the poison of alcohol with ayahuasca, ketamine, and like
so
100 milligram edibles. Yeah. Like she's now on to a better world.
Yeah, she's just tripping balls all the time. Yeah, when I read this, it was just kind of like, this is a term that I used to describe myself, and this so doesn't describe me. So like, like I was just more like, am I the one who's using this wrong, or is this guy not know what he's talking about?
I initially thought of it as California sober was people that were in recovery, that part of their recovery was smoking weed, and that was just a lifestyle that they continued afterward.
Yeah.
Like, that they were that this was the thing that like, okay, what matters is I need to break this dependency on alcohol. I need to break this chemical demand from my brain for this thing because it's affecting my life. But also, I don't know, you get high every once in a while. Like, I can go to the movies and be high.
For sure.
All right.
Popcorn tastes better that way.
We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Write us drunk. Many do.
That's true.
You can write us drunk. That's fine. We don't care. We don't care. We have a new logo.
Oh my God.
We have a new logo. Go ahead, Will. Put it up on the screen.
I hate it so much.
I will hold it up. It is. We're not wrong. Just a MS Paint version of our black dot, and in Comic Sans, we're not RONG.
We're not wrong.
We're not wrong.
Because for the email forever, you had to tell people no apostrophe.
No apostrophe. Yeah.
We love you guys, but you're dummies.
You gotta love it. New hedonism dropped. Keep your eyes posted.
Mm-hmm. Keep your eyes posted, gang.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And another. I'm reading a book from front to cover.
Yep. I'm reading that whole book front to cover. Yep.
I like that.
I think somebody has a hedonism file. Be sure to update these. Eventually I can make a coffee table book. I'll split it with you.
Jen, you're not basic, right? You're the reason I watch this show.
Aw, thank you.
Sounds like a basic bitch wrote that.
Yeah. My people.
2025 apologies. We got a few of these. This is the representative email. Please tell Jen and Heaton that they owe America 2025 apologies for their sane washing and downplaying of Project 2025 prior to the election. They stated repeatedly that Project 2025 was not something to be actually concerned about. And I quote, "No one should ever be afraid of a think tank," unquote. Well, as an American and an employee of the federal government, watching Trump administration use Project 2025 as a checklist, copying and pasting entire sections into policy memos and executive order, I am owed an apology.
Andrew, darling, would you like to be the one to tell them to take this request and shove it up their ass, or would you like me to do it?
I'm gonna meet him halfway. If, listener, you voted for Trump because based on my instruction and that of Jen's, you decided Project 2025 was the tiebreaker and you weren't worried about it, so you voted for Trump, then I apologize to you. I totally apologize to you. If what you're saying is if Jen and I had joined the chorus of emotionally incontinent people that were freaking the fuck out and trying to panic all the time, that somehow would have altered the trajectory of the election or made your life better, then I do not apologize. But if there are people that Project 2025 was the tiebreaker, then yes, I apologize to them.
I apologize for absolutely nothing. And here's why. Because what we said was accurate. That document, which was 992 pages long, so let's not pretend you read it now. That document was a Heritage Foundation document. It was written by literally dozens of people.
Yes.
Not a single one of them with the last name Trump. The Trump campaign was able to easily and accurately say, this is not an explanation of what we want to do.
We have our own agenda. And just to make sure I was right about this, I went into the text of Project 2025, now that we know what Trump is going to do, to see, are they actually, what did you say, using it as a checklist? No, they are not. All you had to do, it took me exactly 1 minute, was look up the words Canada and Mexico, because nowhere in that document they recommend slapping 25% across the board tariffs on Canada or Mexico. In fact, they said the exact opposite. They said that in the first Trump administration, it was a mistake to put tariffs on steel because it hurt all kinds of things. And so they said that the Trump-Biden tariffs should go away. So, no, I'm not apologizing for anything. And I still maintain that the Democrats, their collective freak out and using Project 2025 as this, everybody fear this document that you don't know what's in it and you've never read, and you're definitely not going to read it when you see how long it is, but freak out about it. It didn't help them win, obviously. So no, I'm not apologizing to you. Bye-bye.
Wow. I want to California monogamize you right now. That's great. That was a wonderful answer, Jen. Good job.
Gay furry corrections, right? You mentioned that the NSA people who got busted for talking about sex things on work servers. I would just like to say that we're a lot smarter than those wank muffins at the NSA. We understand what NSFW means. Explain to Jen and Andrew. I think they know what not safe for work is. Yeah.
Not safe for Wednesday.
Yeah. We leave all of our gay furry ooh shit posting to our alt Discord accounts. Which is, yeah. Good for the gay furries.
Very smart. I like wank muffins. Let's use that more.
Yeah, that's good.
You can be better than you are, right? If you're an 80s kid, you might recognize a variation of Swingin' on a Star as the theme song to the show Out of This World, which is a show about a teenager finding out her dad is an extraterrestrial and she can freeze time. Fun fact, the dad, while never seen on camera, was voiced by Burt Reynolds.
Would you like to swing on a star?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what this is in reference to, but I'm glad you wrote in.
No, this was because I've been singing that to my daughter.
Oh, okay.
Or would you rather go to Earth? It's a fun song. I actually liked that show. Her dad was in this little lava lamp. No, it wasn't a lava lamp. It was more of it was what are those salt lamps? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, her dad was next to her bed in this little lamp thing. It was weird. Her name was Evie. Stupid.
You aren't special, writes. I'm a few years younger than you guys, graduated high school in 08, and I remember getting internet in middle school and Facebook in mid to late high school when it was still new, and I think markedly different from what social media is now. Basically, I feel like I grew up without social media the same way that you described, but I'm in the heartland of the millennial years. My fiance, on the other hand, who's a borderline millennial Zoomer, definitely fits the raised by social media mold. This is a long way of saying that I think your generation that you are identifying is just millennials with no need for qualification.
If you had internet in middle school in any way, like you don't know what it was like because we were fully feral.
Look, this fucker. Look, you listen. I am special, fucker. Here's the deal. Here's like, we didn't have social media till middle school. We didn't have the internet till middle. There was internet. Look, your mom did shopping for your Christmases when you were a child on Amazon. I remember the day that my friend, Andrew Main, when I first met him, was like, I bought a book on a website. Like that was where we were. Like the concept of the internet as a connective source was brand new. It had not existed. That's the difference. That's what was happening to us in middle school. Not like the internet was already a thing that existed and then they were building social media.
I think my first email was like junior year of high school. Something like that.
Oh, no, I was a bigger nerd. I was on AIM.
You're also a year younger than me.
I am.
I am the elder of this.
Yeah, I graduated in 07. So when the listener says I'm a few years younger than you all, I graduated 1 year before Heaton. Well, yeah, okay.
Wait, you graduated high school in 07?
Oh, no, 03. My bad, listener. I retract my statement. I apologize. Yep. I graduated high school in 03. My bad. I graduated college in 07.
You are special, writes. Millennials didn't grow up with social media. That's a Gen Z thing. I'm solidly in the center of millennials, graduating in 05, and Facebook was still invite only when I was in college. Y'all seem like elder millennials, zennials to me.
Yeah.
So we are special.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of myself as an elder millennial or a fifth year senior.
Generational trauma, writes. If millennial childhood trauma is 9/11, I posit that late Gen X version would be January 22nd, 1987, when everyone in school was home for the snow day in Pennsylvania, and the news interrupted our morning cartoons for a live feed from Bud Dwyer's last political speech.
Don't know who that is.
Don't look it up then. Wapo writes, Heaton should submit his resume stat. The powers that be desperately need a bootlicker of his eloquence to bravely complain about the government.
Bootlicker?
Well, for a bootlicker, I've made very interesting decisions in my career. Like I left a primetime television writing job in opposition to Donald Trump, and I subsequently got fired from a 6-figure TV hosting job because I endorsed impeaching President Trump. I suspect that the listener hasn't done anything like that. I suspect that you've probably tweeted really hard. So thank you for those additions to the fight. I'm not a bootlicker, listener. What I am is the adult in the room stopping bedwetting leftists like you from trying to run the economy through finger painting or interpretive dance or some other dumbass thing. And if you ever come to power, I'll be one of the first people you shoot as a class enemy. But until that fateful day when some teenage rat fuck in a Che Guevara shirt puts a bullet through my head, I'm going to keep being the adult in the room, and you can keep writing fucking tweets.
Oh.
To the barriers, writes, really, Andrew? That was the montage outro from Les Mis, not adjusted words, and a definite and delicate fuck you to everyone in that room. It was the opposite of pro-MAGA.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. I've seen Les Mis twice, once in theater and once in film, but I've drunkenly sung One Day More probably 60 or 70 times at this point. So you are almost certainly right about that. I went, these are not the lyrics that I've drunkenly sung 60 or 70 times, but it is a complex
because it's the
musical.
montage. Yeah, because it's the montage at the end where they're folding in all the songs from the musical. It was definitely not a fuck you. It's one of the most popular musicals of all time, and they sung it well. Like, it was for the Governors Association. I don't think that it was the military choir saying fuck you to the governors. I don't know.
It was just weird.
I didn't get the impression it was cheeky. I thought it was just fun.
Yeah. 5 things email. These are all the emails about that. Unsigned writes, I'm a DOD employee in the DC area working in a classified space. Regarding the 5 things email, the issue for people like us is twofold. First, the email we received raises so many security red flags. It's written like a text message. It's unsigned and unencrypted. It's asking for information that an adversary could find useful. It screams like a phishing attempt. Secondly, to Jen's point, it's really hard to explain your work when you work on classified projects. When I was in the Army on a similar classified mission, I had immense trouble explaining to my rater what I did on my performance evals because I wasn't permitted to include most of the things I did for security reasons. My rater didn't work in classified matters, and I think it hurt my career advance as a result. Pentagon writes, I'm a federal employee of the DOD. I wanted to clarify a couple things. First, Andrew brought up the idea that the email might be used to see who checks their email. When the hr.opm.gov email got sent last month, they sent out an email that everybody had to respond yes in order to make sure we received the email. So they should already have those metrics. 2, we aren't mad that we have to be accountable to somebody. We already are. They're called our supervisors. Most of us update on our supervisors daily, if not weekly. We're mad that someone from an unsigned email in a department that we don't work for is demanding to review our work without any kind of context or understanding. As an aside, the emails always look more like sketchy scam emails.
Yeah. So 2 points to this. One, I agree with you on point 1. I don't know that you're even disagreeing with me. I brought up last week the good faith argument in favor of what Elon Musk was saying was that they were looking for dead email addresses or people that weren't checking their email or whatever. And at the time, I didn't think that held water. Like, I agree with you. Like, I think all federal employees are checking their email right now. I don't think anybody's coasting. I think they're definitely checking their email. So I agree with you there. I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit on number 2. And that I don't think that you need to only be concerned about justifying yourself to your supervisor for 2 reasons. You don't work for your supervisor. You work for the American people, for which you have my thanks. But ultimately, everybody needs to be justifying themselves to them, to the American people. I don't know that your supervisor is necessarily the one to make that call. And the reason that I say that is I can think of plenty of incentive situations where if I am a supervisor of a particular department and I cut some people in it, Congress goes in and goes, oh, great, you needed less money than you thought you did, but we'll give you less money next year. So there could be a situation where I am incentivized to not make cuts. So having an external body on behalf of the American taxpayer whom you need to justify your position to makes sense to me.
The other thing that I actually just thought of as we were talking about this that might be a reason for sending that out, despite how dickish and bizarre and amateurish that it was, is that apparently one of the things that happened when Doge was first coming in was that they could not find a mechanism that was just a literal government-wide email tool, like to just blast out to everybody, that anytime that you would want to do something like that, you would send it to department heads and department heads would repeat it, but there was no like central way to do everything. And so a good way to stress test whether or not everybody gets the government-wide email is to see whether or not they're pissed off or annoyed with an unreasonable request.
Did you see OPM got slapped down by the courts? So they revised their original memo. They were like, what we're saying is just suggestions. It's actually the agency and department heads that make these calls. And it's like, okay, OPM.
Fast Good writes, been thinking about how the aggressive approach to systemic reforms by figures like Musk and Trump exacerbate our collective ambivalence toward change. While their confrontational methods addressing waste and inefficiency lack the humanity I'd prefer, perhaps imperfect action trumps the paralysis of idealism. Still, if they are dismantling programs that serve themselves. And finally, federal workers are parasites, writes, in Anatomy of the State, Murray Rothbard observed that the production always precedes predation. Every federal worker who transitions to the private sector employment ceases to be a predator and becomes a producer. You can argue that some of these positions should exist. I argue that the highest bureaucrat is worth less than the lowest laborer because the bureaucrat earns by theft what the laborer must earn honestly.
This is the most libertarian, anti-government trash take.
Rothbard?
I don't know who Murray Rothbard is, but just like the idea that a person who's working in the government is like I just fucking hate this anti-government stuff. Like people that go into our military instead of becoming mercenaries, they earn a lot less money, but they're serving our country. Like thank you for your service is what we should be saying to them. There's people that have brilliant mathematical minds, and instead of going into the private sector to make a shitload of money, they go to the National Weather Service and save lives. Like, there are really good, smart people that work in our government that don't deserve to be spoken about this way. Just, it's such a trash take. I hate it.
I'm going to say, listener, I will stick with you through Hayek, but I will depart by the time you get into Murray Rothbard. Rothbard's really not a libertarian; he's an anarchist. If we want to like get deep into it, so we're going from I think economic analysis to ethical analysis. And I'm with Hayek. Like the reason that I tend to be skeptical of government is not that I think government is inherently evil. I don't. I think it is inherently prone to being inefficient and incompetent. And so for that reason, I'm very, very skeptical of government. But I don't have a problem with it existing. I want it to work well, as would Hayek, I think.
And finally, we have some Pope emails. Dad writes, when discussing the importance of the Pope in the modern world, I think it's important to note what type of power the Pope actually has. While he may or may not have authority over statecraft or the markets, which I agree is probably good, his authority lies in his role as a spiritual father who provides direction and guidance even to non-Catholics. It may not be considered hard power, but nonetheless, it has impacted the world. While John Paul II felt like a loving, caring, and strong father, Francis kind of feels like your stepdad. Sure, he's your dad, but does he really have the same authority? Sure doesn't feel like it. His messaging is often confusing. His disciplinary exactions seem uneven or questionable. A great example is how he handled Bishop Strickland in Texas. And he really misunderstands his own kids who lean more traditional like myself. Overall, he doesn't have a great control over his own house, and it shows. Catholics right now struggle to find unity. I mean, both J.D. Vance and Nancy Pelosi are Catholics, and they are vastly different. And if a pope can't foster unity, few will take him seriously. So when he preaches to the world, everybody goes, meh. Nowadays, the church seems like an inconsequential NGO that is not its purpose or its mission. But with Francis at the helm, I can see why people think the papacy isn't relevant. It's more about the man rather than the position. We got a bunch of emails from Catholics, by the way.
What was the general timbre? Because no one on this panel is a practicing Catholic, and I'm curious as to what the responses were generally like.
Oh, I don't know. I deleted them immediately.
Yeah.
Justin.
No, I'm just kidding. It was mostly, I mean, these are the representative ones that I pulled out. Scoozy writes, in a quick correction, the Pope was not in the Holy See Vatican on Wednesday when you recorded. He was in a hospital in Rome, which are two different countries.
Thank you for that correction. You're correct. The Vatican is a sovereign neighborhood within Rome, but is legally a distinct country.
It's adorable.
You know where I really want to go?
Like
San Marino. The fuck are they up to? Like, you look at a map of Europe and you're like, all right, okay, like there's Austria. That makes sense to me. Okay, Serbia. I get that. A lot of Serbians in Serbia, right? You look at Italy and you're like, oh, Italy got its shit together. All right, okay. And then the Pope, he has its own thing, is we're going to like pretend that the Vatican still has the papal states. It's just like 8 square blocks or whatever, 5 by 5. San Marino. What are you guys up to? What are you doing? What you're just like, no, we want our own stamps. We will not have Italian stamps. Really want to go there. Really want to check it out.
Well, really, like the Italian nation that we know is like pretty young, right? Isn't it like around like World War II?
Mm. Yeah. World War I. It's Emmanuel that happens just before World War I that unites Italy as a sovereign country. And even before that, too, like it's not that Italy was like Italy, but with a different name. Like Justin, you and I have both been to Sicily. Like Sicily was pretty much Greek up till maybe 400 years ago. And then it spoke a language that you could technically call Italian, but was mutually unintelligible to Italians in Italy. Like it would be like the difference between like Breton in France and like Gallic or something like that. Like Italy as a concept and as a country is very new. It's newer than the United States.
Io capito. That's I understand in Sicilian. I learned that.
Bravo.
Yours in Christ writes, Mel Gibson is a sedevacanist, from the Latin sede vacante, or empty chair. It means that he believes that the chair of St. Peter, aka the office of the Pope, is empty. Technically, whenever a Pope dies, all Catholics are sedevacanus. They come in all flavors and varieties. Some say that there has not been a valid Pope since the death of Pope Pius in 1985, or sorry, of 58 rather.
58.
Yeah. Some say not since John the 23rd in 1963. And some used to claim that Benedict the 16th was still the Pope despite his 2013 resignation.
All off the top of my head, folks. I'm not reading the email.
But after the death of 2022, that position has mostly lost ground. It's worth emphasizing that even if we focus only on the pool of Catholics who authentically try to follow all of the teachings of the church, Sedevacanists are a teeny tiny minority. Which
interesting point.
Which was, he did spell out, Mel Gibson did in that Rogan interview where he was talking about how he does not believe, like, since the way he described it was like the Pope that took over after one of these dead popes, I forget if it's the one in the late 50s or the early 60s, that the new Pope took on investments and a name that belayed that they were not Catholic. Or
like Sugar Tits. Pope Sugar Tits.
Pope Sugar Tits the third.
The third.
We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg on, it's free HBO week on PX3. You know how like HBO every once in a while will just give you HBO for free for a week to like hook you?
Yeah.
So instead of doing the Sunday show where I go over all of the Sunday programs, that crazy scene happened in the Vatican on Friday. If you want an hour-long breakdown, including all the clips on and history on Zelenskyy, that came out on Sunday for everybody, paying people first, and then we delayed it, but it came out for everybody on Monday. Tuesday, we have a great interview with a woman by the name of Katie Harbath, who has done digital information for campaigns since like the beginning of the internet in 2000. So we have a lot of very nerdy, really fun conversations about that. And then you got my full, including clips, episode of the fake State of the Union that came out today. But that is free for everybody as an enticing for you to jump across the paywall on Substack. So it's a fun time to go ahead and check out the PX3 show this week. A lot of news.
Very nice.
Jen?
So I'm still working on the next public episode of Congressional Dish, but behind my paywall in the most recent Last Week in Congress, I noticed that there was a hearing about the Government Accountability Office's 2025 high risk list report. This is a report that they do every 2 years where they go through the government and they identify waste and fraud in the government. And so I kind of checked it out in the middle of that episode. It wasn't planned. It was just something I did. But I checked it out and kind of compared it to what Elon and Doge are doing. And surprise, surprise, they are quite different. But I do find it like kind of fascinating to go back and forth between the two. So if you're interested in that, support my show.
Heats, what's up with the ORF?
There are 2 or 3 different things I might do. I haven't made up my mind yet. So rather than plugging the ORF, I'm going to plug my other California Monogamous podcast in my podcasting portfolio, which is Alienating the Audience, my sci-fi podcast. I have on Enrique Couto, and we're talking about the film Subservience with Megan Fox. So there's a lot of discussions about fembots, sex robots, the economics of robots, and what the ethics that we have are to them. It's a really fun conversation, and that's on Alienating the Audience.
Was that the Netflix show?
Yeah.
Subservience?
Or maybe HBO or something.
I watched that one. Yeah. Okay.
It's not a terribly good film, but it's a very good conversation about it.
It's an interesting concept. That was my favorite thing about the film. Like, it's a good conversation piece for sure.
It is.
Provocative title.
And Megan Fox is kind of hot. So
it's like newer Megan Fox? Or like old school?
I think
Megan
it came
Fox?
out like
No,
this year.
it's newer Megan Fox, but it kind of works because she's a bit plastic in her acting and literally a bit more plastic. And so like it actually works as a sex android.
Yeah. It does.
But if you like conversations about sex robots and economics, check out Alienating the Audience this week because
there's been a very sexy string of programming from you. Didn't you have a sex topic like a week ago?
I did and regret that. First of all, I built up all this goodwill doing Charity Week. I did an entire week of charity. I like fucking poured my heart out. I cried twice over the course of the program. I cried when I went to in Austin. There's a wonderful group called Notes for Love where they do an entire choir for people that have Alzheimer's. And I went there and as I'm talking to these ladies, I just started crying. I was overwhelmed by how kind they are. And I can't remember the other one that I started crying, but I started choking up talking to somebody. Final day, had this really interesting conversation where this lady was very vulnerable with me. She writes letters to death row inmates, and she maintains these relationships with these people that are very in a very weird, specific part of life. So did that, and then I waited a couple of weeks and I did an episode on sex by the numbers, where I think I obliterated all of that goodwill. I just got rid of all of it.
Wait, people were mad at you?
Yeah, why would they be mad?
Let me rephrase this. Whatever wholesome Dick Van Dyke, earnest do-gooder energy I built up was somewhat sullied by me talking to my friend and her going, the average amount of sex partners most people have is between 3 and 5. And I was like, oh,
really?
Oh, I'm a whore. I'm a complete whore. Oh my God. I don't even know at this point how many, I can't keep track. And so I had somebody from church, from the little kid table at church back when I was at church, who's now an adult, that was like, hey, listen to the show. Glad you're banging a lot. And I was like, I don't know that I really needed to have that.
Wait, so this was all because you had that one interaction?
Andy the whore.
Andy the whore. The way I like to think of it, Jen, is I'm sexually productive. It's not a laxity. It's an industry.
Oh my God.
He's efficient.
I'm efficient. Sure, no, I'm not efficient. I'm just no. Hold on, ladies. Not efficient. Not that fast.
Yeah, I guess I should take that back.
But
actually, I have
providing a lot of service. Providing a lot of service.
How is that a distinction without a difference?
Well, efficiency might be
in retrospect. I was like, this might have been. I will say it is an interesting episode because in that episode, we go over what are the actual amount of sex partners have, because there's this sort of presumption we have in our culture that everybody's banging all the time. The reality is that most people don't have that many sexual partners. It's just that it doesn't look that way because of media. We go over a lot of marriage statistics. Because there's almost 2 different marital institutions in our country. There's people in the top half economically and people in the bottom half, and divorce rates and marriage rates are very different between those 2 groups of people. So it was an interesting episode. It just,
so then you felt bad about it. And as a way of dealing with that guilt, you did a fuck robot episode on your other podcast.
I think I actually recorded the fuck robot episode before I talked to Kathy. It's just that the sci-fi episode comes out once a month.
Okay. So are you still this horny, or are you, how much more cum drenched content do we have to deal with that?
Justin, in the same way that gravity does not fluctuate, the libido of Andrew Heaton is more or less constant, but my desire to talk about it has been assuaged.
There we go. You're in a refractory period when it comes to fun content.
Yes.
Okay. Well, until you get your steam back up again. For us, the perpetually rock hard Andrew Heaton, the California sober Jen, and me, your humble host, Justin Robert Young, I would like to remind you that we're not wrong.
And Andrew's a whore.